Ryan Walker, a 12-year-old boy, lived with his widowed mother, Karen, in a crumbling shack on the outskirts of Maplewood. The roof leaked during every storm, the walls were thin enough to let the cold winds in, and the creaking wooden floor was a constant reminder of their fragile home. Despite their dire circumstances, Ryan found comfort in the warmth of his mother's love and the endless possibilities his imagination offered. As he lay on his thin, worn-out mattress each night, he would stare at the dimly lit ceiling and envision a brighter future. His mind was a playground of ideas, filled with towering castles and grand mansions that stood in stark contrast to the harsh reality surrounding him. In the quiet of those nights, Ryan would often whisper his dreams to his mother, saying, "Someday, I'll build us a house so big it touches the sky." Karen would listen, her tired face softening into a faint smile as she stroked his hair. Yet, her eyes betrayed the unspoken fears and worries she carried. Bills piling up, her health deteriorating from long hours at the diner, and the weight of providing for her son in a world that seemed unkind to the poor. She admired Ryan's resilience and dreams, but secretly wondered if life would ever offer him the opportunities he deserved. Still, she never voiced her doubts, choosing instead to nurture his hope, which had become the only light in their otherwise bleak existence. One rainy afternoon, as the sky wept and the damp air clung to his skin, Ryan ventured deep into the woods in search of firewood. The forest was eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds braving the downpour. The rain had turned the dirt paths into muddy trails, making every step a careful calculation. Just as Ryan bent down to pick up a branch, he noticed an elderly man stumbling through the thicket, his face etched with worry. The man, dressed in a faded coat, appeared out of place and disoriented, clutching a map that was too soaked to read. Without hesitation, Ryan approached him, asking gently, "Are you lost, sir?" The man introduced himself as Mr. Brooks and explained that he had come to the woods to find a shortcut back to town, but had lost his bearings in the storm. Despite being cold and soaked to the bone, Ryan guided Mr. Brooks through the winding paths, his familiarity with the forest proving invaluable. By the time they reached the edge of town, the rain had eased, and Mr. Brooks seemed visibly relieved. With a grateful smile, he reached into his pocket and handed Ryan a shiny silver coin. "It may not seem like much, but it's a small token for a kind heart," he said warmly. Ryan hesitated, unsure whether to accept it, but Mr. Brooks insisted. As Ryan watched the old man disappear into the distance, he turned the coin over in his hand, its surface gleaming faintly in the gray light. It felt like more than just a coin. It felt like a symbol of hope, a reminder that kindness could ripple far beyond its immediate moment. When Ryan brought the coin to the town's small general store, he was astonished to learn that it was worth far more than he had expected. The storekeeper, a shrewd but kind man, inspected the coin closely before declaring it a rare mint with significant value. Ryan's first thought was to use the money for food or repairs to their shack, but something inside him stirred, an idea that seemed far more enduring than a fleeting comfort. His gaze wandered to the dusty shelf of books tucked away in the corner of the store, where a faded, second-hand volume titled Foundations of Architecture and Design caught his eye. The book's worn spine and yellowed pages suggested years of wisdom, and Ryan knew he had to have it. With careful deliberation, he exchanged the coin for the book, clutching it tightly as if it were a treasure map to a better future. That night, back in the dim glow of their tiny shack, Ryan carefully turned the pages, marveling at the intricate diagrams and detailed explanations of building principles. Words like load-bearing walls and structural integrity fascinated him, opening a door to a world he had only glimpsed in his dreams. By the flicker of a candle, he began sketching his first designs on scraps of paper, he had salvaged from old notebooks. His drawings were crude but filled with imagination. Small cottages, towering castles, and sturdy bridges. Though his hands were smudged with ink and exhaustion tugged at his eyelids, Ryan's heart brimmed with excitement. Each line he drew felt like a step closer to the life he envisioned. A life where the shack would be replaced by something solid, beautiful, and enduring. At school, Ryan was an easy target for ridicule. His threadbare clothes and patched shoes stood out in a classroom full of children whose families lived more comfortably. Every day seemed like a new opportunity for his classmates to remind him of his place. One morning, as he shared an idea during a group discussion about future ambitions, Ryan mentioned his dream of becoming an architect and building grand structures. The room erupted in laughter, with Lucas, the class bully, leading the mockery. "You? Build castles? You'd be lucky to fix that shack of yours without it falling apart." Lucas sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. The laughter of the others echoed in Ryan's ears, cutting through him like a blade. He sat in silence, his cheeks burning, but his heart hardened with resolve. That evening, Ryan walked home with his head low but his mind racing. The humiliation stung deeply, but it also ignited a spark of determination within him. He replayed Lucas's words over and over, each time turning his hurt into fuel. He promised himself that he would prove them all wrong, not out of vengeance but to show that dreams, no matter how improbable, could become reality. From that day forward, Ryan immersed himself even more in his books and sketches, practicing his designs with renewed focus. Whenever he felt doubt creeping in, he remembered the jeering faces and used their disbelief as a silent challenge. He would rise above their taunts, not just for himself but for his mother, who believed in him when no one else did. Karen had always been resilient, but the strain of their circumstances grew heavier with each passing day. Determined to give Ryan a chance to chase his dreams, she took on extra shifts at the local diner, often working late into the night. The long hours standing on her feet, combined with the physical toll of balancing multiple jobs, began to wear on her. Her once vibrant energy faded, replaced by a deep fatigue she tried to hide. Despite her exhaustion, Karen would always greet Ryan with a warm, albeit weary, smile when he came home from school. She pretended not to notice his worried glances at her trembling hands or the persistent cough she couldn't seem to shake. Ryan began to sense the growing burden on his mother, and guilt gnawed at him. One evening, after noticing how pale she looked, he suggested that he could leave school to find work and help ease her load. Karen's expression turned firm, her voice steady despite her evident fatigue. "No," she said, placing a gentle but determined hand on his shoulder. "Your dreams are worth it, Ryan. Don't let them go because of me." Her weak smile betrayed the immense sacrifices she was making, but the conviction in her words left no room for argument. Karen believed with all her heart that Ryan's potential could break the cycle of hardship they lived in, and she would give everything she had to see him succeed, even at the expense of her own well-being. Mrs. Harper, the town librarian, had a keen eye for recognizing potential in the young people who visited her library. She first noticed Ryan when he spent hours poring over the limited collection of design and architecture books on the dusty shelves. His intense focus and the way he carefully handled the fragile pages caught her attention. Intrigued, she approached him one afternoon and struck up a conversation about his interest in building. Ryan, hesitant at first, shared his dreams of becoming an architect and designing homes that could transform lives. Mrs. Harper listened intently, her eyes lighting up as she saw his passion. From that day forward, she took him under her wing, determined to nurture his talent. Mrs. Harper began pulling out old blueprints and vintage architectural magazines from the library's archives, treasures that had been gathering dust for years. She showed Ryan how to read and interpret the complex diagrams, teaching him the language of design, angles, scales, and proportions. On weekends, she would stay late at the library to guide him through drafting exercises, helping him refine his sketches. "Knowledge is your greatest tool," she often reminded him, her voice filled with encouragement. Under her mentorship, Ryan's understanding of architecture grew rapidly. He started applying the concepts he learned to his own designs, filling his notebook with increasingly sophisticated drawings. Mrs. Harper became more than a mentor. She was a source of inspiration, pushing Ryan to believe that with enough knowledge and perseverance, even the grandest dreams could become reality. Ryan's decision to transform their dilapidated shack into a proper two-room house was met with skepticism and ridicule, but he refused to let the doubters deter him. Every day after school, he roamed the outskirts of Maplewood, scavenging for scrap materials at nearby construction sites. Rusty nails, discarded wood, and broken bricks became treasures in his eyes. Armed with a notebook full of sketches and a determination stronger than the whispers of doubt around him, he began assembling a plan. The design was simple yet functional, a small but sturdy house that could stand against the harsh winters and offer his mother the comfort she deserved. He spent countless evenings fine-tuning his blueprints, erasing and redrawing every line until it matched the vision in his mind. The townsfolk watched his efforts with a mix of amusement and disdain, dubbing the project Ryan's Folly. They would shake their heads as they passed by, chuckling at the sight of a boy hammering away at scraps as if he could conjure a home out of discarded refuse. "He's just a kid with dreams too big for his britches," one man muttered, but Ryan paid no mind. He worked tirelessly, his hands calloused and bruised from labor. He found joy in every nail driven into wood, every wall that began to take shape. For him, it wasn't just about proving the townsfolk wrong. It was about proving to himself and his mother that their circumstances didn't define their future. Each step forward, no matter how small, was a victory against the odds stacked against him. Ryan's progress on the house had slowed to a crawl. He had used up nearly all the scrap materials he had managed to gather, and the structure stood incomplete, a skeleton of his dream. Each day he walked to construction sites hoping for discarded wood or bricks, but lately, there had been little to find. Exhaustion and frustration began to weigh heavily on him. One evening, as he stared at the half-finished walls, doubt crept into his mind. He wondered if the townsfolk had been right, if perhaps he was foolish to think he could build a home from almost nothing. For the first time, he considered giving up, a thought that left him feeling hollow. As if summoned by Ryan's despair, Mr. Brooks appeared the very next morning, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. The old man carried an air of purpose as he approached, his voice warm and steady. "I heard about your project, Ryan," he began, a small smile playing on his lips, "and I remembered the kindness you showed me that rainy day in the woods." He gestured to a cart laden with unused wood, bricks, and even some roofing materials, all salvaged from an old barn he no longer needed. "Your kindness inspired me," Mr. Brooks continued, his eyes twinkling with encouragement. "Now, let me return the favor." Ryan's heart swelled with gratitude, his hope rekindled. With renewed energy and the unexpected support, he felt as though the impossible had suddenly become within reach. One stormy night, as thunder rolled across the sky and rain lashed against the unfinished walls of the house, Ryan worked tirelessly to secure the structure against the elements. The wind howled, threatening to undo his hard work, but Ryan refused to retreat. Determined to finish what he had started, he climbed the makeshift ladder to reinforce the roof. His hands, slick with rain and numb from the cold, fumbled with the tools. A sudden gust of wind shook the structure, and before he could regain his balance, the ladder gave way. Ryan fell hard onto the muddy ground below, pain shooting through his arm as he landed. Drenched and injured, he struggled to his feet, clutching his arm and gritting his teeth against the ache. When Karen found him limping back into the shack, her face was a mask of panic and concern. She immediately tended to his bruised and swollen arm, urging him to rest and abandon the project until he recovered. "Ryan, this isn't worth hurting yourself over," she pleaded, her voice thick with worry. But Ryan, eyes burning with determination despite the pain, shook his head. "Every castle is built with sacrifices," he said firmly, his voice steady even as his body protested. Karen saw the unyielding resolve in her son's eyes and knew she couldn't stop him. Though her heart ached for his struggles, she couldn't help but admire his unwavering spirit. Ryan returned to work the very next day, one arm in a sling but his resolve stronger than ever. For him, the fall was just another challenge to overcome, a reminder that even the path to greatness was paved with hardship. After months of relentless effort, Ryan finally stood before the completed structure. A modest two-room home that was far more than just walls and a roof. The house wasn't grand, but every beam and brick told a story of determination, resilience, and unwavering hope. The sturdy walls now kept out the cold winds, and the roof, crafted from salvaged materials, stood strong against the rain. Inside, the floors were smooth and even, a far cry from the creaking boards of their old shack. For Ryan, the transformation wasn't just physical. It was symbolic of the life he was determined to build for himself and his mother. As he looked at the house in the golden light of the setting sun, his heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just a home. It was a testament to the power of perseverance. When Karen saw the finished house for the first time, her reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped inside, running her hands over the walls as if to confirm it was real. "It's beautiful, Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She pulled him into a tight embrace, her gratitude and love pouring out in that single gesture. Word of Ryan's accomplishment spread quickly through the town, and the very people who had once mocked him now looked on with admiration. They began to see Ryan not as a dreamer, but as someone with the grit to turn those dreams into reality. Children pointed at the house in awe, and adults nodded with newfound respect. The boy who had been dismissed as foolish had proven them wrong, and in doing so had inspired the entire community. One crisp morning, as Ryan was tidying up the small workshop he had fashioned from leftover materials, a letter arrived, delivered by the town's postman. The envelope was simple but carried an official seal that made his heart race. With trembling hands, Ryan opened it and read the contents aloud. It was an invitation to participate in a prestigious design competition in the city, a chance to showcase his architectural skills to a panel of renowned judges. For a moment, he could hardly believe it. The boy who had once been mocked for his dreams was now being given the opportunity to prove himself on a much larger stage. Excitement surged through him, but it was quickly followed by a wave of nervousness. This was his first real test beyond the boundaries of Maplewood, and he couldn't afford to fail. Determined to give it his all, Ryan spent every free moment working on his entry. He decided to create a model of a grand castle, a design inspired by the vivid dreams of his childhood. Using wood scraps, cardboard, and paint, he meticulously crafted every detail, from the towering spires to the intricate windows and archways. His hands moved with both precision and passion, pouring his heart into the design. Late into the night, he would sit at his workbench, adjusting small features, making sure everything was perfect. Each piece of the castle represented more than just his skills. It embodied his journey, his struggles, and his unyielding belief in the power of dreams. Though the thought of competing against more experienced designers in the city was daunting, Ryan held onto the hope that his creation would stand out, not just for its beauty but for the story it carried. When Ryan arrived in the bustling city, he was overwhelmed by the sheer scale and energy of the place. Skyscrapers stretched toward the clouds, and the streets buzzed with people rushing in every direction. The competition venue, a grand hall adorned with elegant architecture, was filled with aspiring designers, each showcasing their creations. As Ryan set up his modest model on the designated table, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between his work and those of the other participants. Many of them had polished, professional-looking displays, crafted with expensive materials and supported by digital presentations. Their creators, mostly wealthy kids with sharp suits and practiced confidence, were surrounded by mentors who offered last-minute advice and encouragement. Ryan, standing alone in his worn but neatly pressed clothes, felt their judgmental glances and heard whispers about his amateurish design. Despite the cold reception, Ryan refused to let their disdain shake him. He focused on his castle, reminding himself why he had come. His humble beginnings weren't a weakness, they were his strength. Every piece of his model told a story of resilience and passion, qualities no amount of money could buy. As he observed the other entries, he realized that many lacked the soul and authenticity his design carried. While the competition was fierce, Ryan drew strength from the struggles he had already overcome. Each dismissive glance only fueled his determination to prove that creativity and hard work could stand alongside privilege and resources. By the time the judges arrived to evaluate the entries, Ryan stood tall beside his model, ready to tell the story of a boy who dreamed of castles and dared to build them. As Ryan nervously adjusted his display for the competition, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Is this your work?" Turning, he saw a girl around his age with a warm smile and curious eyes. She introduced herself as Sarah, a fellow competitor whose entry stood a few tables away. Unlike most of the other contestants, Sarah didn't exude arrogance or dismissiveness. Instead, she seemed genuinely interested in Ryan's castle model. "It's incredible," she said, leaning in to examine the intricate details. "There's so much heart in it. What inspired you?" Ryan hesitated for a moment before sharing his story. The dreams he had as a child, the struggles he and his mother had faced, and the late nights spent crafting this very design. Sarah listened intently, her admiration growing with every word. Over the course of the day, Sarah became an unexpected ally. She noticed Ryan's nervousness about the upcoming presentation and offered to help. Together, they practiced his delivery, refining how he would explain the unique aspects of his design and its emotional significance. "Don't try to sound like everyone else," she advised, her tone encouraging. "Your story is what makes this special. Stay true to that, and they'll see the magic in it." Sarah's kindness bolstered Ryan's confidence, and her belief in his vision reminded him why he had entered the competition in the first place. By the time the judges approached, Ryan felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to share not just a model but the heart and hope it represented. When Ryan's name was called, he took a deep breath and stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The large hall fell silent as all eyes turned to him, and for a moment, he felt the weight of their expectations or lack thereof. Standing beside his carefully crafted model, Ryan began to speak. His voice wavered at first, but as he delved into the story behind his design, it grew stronger. He shared how his humble beginnings had inspired the castle, a symbol of hope and perseverance. "This isn't just a structure," he said, gesturing toward the model. "It's a reminder that no matter where we start, we have the power to build something extraordinary." Ryan's words resonated deeply with the judges. While many other participants had highlighted technical details and flashy features, Ryan spoke from the heart. He explained the practicality of the castle's design, emphasizing how it combined beauty with functionality, but he always tied it back to its purpose, to inspire others to dream beyond their limitations. The sincerity in his voice and the passion in his eyes were impossible to ignore. The judges leaned in, intrigued not only by the craftsmanship of his model but by the vision it represented. As he finished, the room was quiet for a moment before polite applause broke out, and Ryan could see the judges exchanging impressed glances. For the first time, he felt that he belonged here, not because of wealth or privilege, but because of the strength of his dreams and the authenticity of his message. In the days following Ryan's presentation, a shadow fell over his excitement. Whispers began circulating among the contestants and even some of the organizers. Rumors that Ryan's design wasn't his own. "There's no way a kid from nowhere could create something like that," someone murmured, and the sentiment quickly spread. The accusation stung, each word feeling like a blow to Ryan's hard-earned confidence. The judges requested an inquiry, and Ryan was asked to provide proof that the design was original. Heartbroken and overwhelmed, he retreated to his small room in the city, clutching his sketches and notebooks that held the evidence of his labor. For a fleeting moment, he considered withdrawing from the competition, wondering if fighting back was worth the pain of being doubted. But Sarah and Mrs. Harper refused to let him give in. Sarah, with her unwavering determination, found Ryan sitting dejectedly in the competition venue's corner and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You've worked too hard to let this stop you," she said, her voice steady and encouraging. Meanwhile, Mrs. Harper, who had come to the city after hearing about the competition, reminded Ryan of the long nights they had spent poring over blueprints and designs together. "Your truth is stronger than their lies," she told him gently. With their support, Ryan gathered every sketch, draft, and model he had created over the months. He returned to the competition hall with his head held high, determined to fight for his work and to show the world that his design was born of dreams, not deceit. Determined to clear his name, Ryan worked tirelessly to gather every piece of evidence that could prove the originality of his work. He laid out his old sketches, drafts, and notes, some of which were scribbled on the backs of worn papers and scraps he had saved over the months. Each page told a story of progression, from rough outlines to detailed blueprints, showing the evolution of his castle design. He even retrieved photographs taken by Mrs. Harper during their late-night drafting sessions at the library. With Sarah's help, he organized everything into a coherent presentation, ensuring that every detail was accounted for. "Let your work speak for itself," Sarah said, encouraging him before the review meeting. With a mixture of nervousness and resolve, Ryan handed over the materials to the panel of judges tasked with reviewing the allegations. The review process was thorough, but the evidence was undeniable. The judges examined each sketch and compared them to the final model, finding clear consistency and originality in Ryan's work. After deliberation, they reinstated his entry, officially clearing his name. The news spread quickly, and the public's perception of Ryan shifted dramatically. What had begun as doubt and dismissal turned into admiration and support. People admired his resilience and integrity, rallying behind the young boy who had dared to stand up for himself against all odds. Even some of his competitors approached him with newfound respect, acknowledging the passion and authenticity that set him apart. For Ryan, the experience was more than just a vindication. It was a powerful reminder that truth, hard work, and perseverance could triumph over doubt and adversity. When the winners were announced, Ryan stood among the crowd, his heart pounding as the judge began listing the awards. When his name was called for first prize, he froze in disbelief. The hall erupted in applause, but for a moment, all Ryan could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat. Slowly, he walked to the stage, his legs feeling like they might give way beneath him. As the judge handed him the certificate and prize, a full scholarship to a prestigious architectural school. Ryan's hands trembled. This wasn't just a victory for him. It was a validation of every late night, every struggle, and every ounce of hope he had poured into his work. He looked out into the audience, searching for the faces of Sarah and Mrs. Harper, who smiled at him with pride and encouragement. When asked to speak, Ryan cleared his throat and took a deep breath. "This isn't just my win," he began, his voice steady despite the overwhelming emotions. "This is for my mother, who sacrificed everything to keep my dreams alive. She's the reason I'm standing here today." The crowd fell silent, captivated by his sincerity. "This is just the first step toward building our dream castle," he added, his voice growing stronger. The audience erupted into cheers, moved by his heartfelt dedication. In that moment, Ryan felt not just a sense of accomplishment but a deep gratitude for the people who had supported him. The scholarship wasn't just an opportunity for education. It was the foundation of the future he had always imagined, one where he could give back and create a legacy inspired by his humble beginnings. Years later, Ryan stood on the stage once again, this time accepting his degree in architecture with top honors. The applause from his peers and professors echoed through the grand hall, a stark contrast to the quiet nights spent dreaming in his small shack back in Maplewood. Graduation marked not just the end of his academic journey but the beginning of a mission he had long envisioned. Driven by the memories of his own hardships, Ryan was determined to use his skills to make a difference. With the support of mentors and friends he had gained along the way, he launched his own architecture firm, focusing on innovative and affordable designs for underprivileged families. The firm, aptly named Foundation of Hope, quickly gained recognition for its unique approach and heartfelt mission. Ryan's designs were more than just buildings. They were safe havens that offered dignity and opportunity to families in need. He traveled to underserved communities, meeting people who reminded him of his own struggles, and listened to their stories to ensure his designs met their specific needs. His work wasn't about grandeur or profit, but about creating spaces that could transform lives. News of his projects spread, and soon, Ryan became a symbol of resilience and compassion in the field of architecture. Despite his growing success, he remained grounded, always remembering the journey that had shaped him. For Ryan, every home he designed was a tribute to the sacrifices his mother had made and a reminder that dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed, could become a reality. When Ryan returned to Maplewood, it was with a sense of purpose and gratitude. The town, once a place of hardship, now felt like the starting point of something much greater. Using his resources and experience, Ryan decided to give back in the most meaningful way he could. He designed and constructed a community center at the heart of Maplewood, a space where young people could explore their creativity and learn practical skills. The center was equipped with classrooms, workshops, and a small library filled with books on architecture, engineering, and design. Ryan wanted the next generation to have access to the opportunities he had once fought so hard to find. He poured his heart into the project, ensuring the building wasn't just functional but also inspiring, a beacon of hope for the entire community. One day, during a workshop on design fundamentals, Ryan noticed a familiar face among the students. It was Lucas, his former school bully, now older and visibly humbled. As the class ended, Lucas approached Ryan, his head slightly bowed. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice earnest. "I was wrong to mock you back then. I didn't see your potential, and I didn't understand your dreams." Ryan listened in silence, memories of those hurtful schoolyard moments flashing briefly through his mind. Instead of anger, he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing how far he had come. "It's never too late to change," Ryan replied with a small smile. The two shook hands, and Lucas became one of the center's most dedicated students, eager to learn and inspired by Ryan's journey. For Ryan, The moment was a powerful reminder of how perseverance could not only shape his own life, but also transform the perspectives of others. Years of hard work and dedication culminated in the day Ryan had dreamed of since he was a boy. On a quiet hill overlooking Maplewood, he completed a magnificent home for his mother, a structure that embodied both his talent and the love that had driven him to succeed. The house wasn't just large or beautiful. It was a masterpiece, blending elegance with warmth. The tall windows invited sunlight to dance across the polished wooden floors, while the carefully designed rooms offered both comfort and a sense of grandeur. Every corner of the home held a piece of Ryan's journey, from the intricate details inspired by his early sketches to the sturdy foundation that symbolized the sacrifices he and his mother had made. For Ryan, this wasn't just a house. It was the castle he had promised to build for her. As the sun set over Maplewood, Ryan and Karen stood together on the balcony, gazing at the town below. The view was breathtaking, but Karen's eyes were fixed on her son, pride and gratitude radiating from her expression. "You didn't just build a castle, Ryan," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "You built hope for everyone who believed in you." Ryan smiled, his heart full as he looked at the woman who had been his greatest inspiration. The house was more than just a fulfillment of his childhood promise. It was a testament to the power of dreams, perseverance, and love. As they stood there, the wind carrying the faint sounds of life in the town below, Ryan knew this was only the beginning. His castle wasn't just for them. It was a symbol for the community, a beacon of possibility for anyone who dared to dream as he once had.